I want to go back a couple years ago and talk about how things got started for you. Maybe some of the early struggles that you went through that I think a lot of
Yeah.
people can relate to. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I have I got into real estate after leaving behind a bit of we'll call it a personal training business and fitness. I owned my own like studio and I was doing like low six figures doing that. So I thought I was hot stuff, you know. And a lot of that came from video marketing, creating YouTube or Instagram content, and that's how I got my clients in fitness. And getting into real estate, moving to Denver, which that was in Los Angeles. And so moving to Denver, no sphere, no anything. I was like, well, I'm amazing at business. I'm great at this stuff. I'm just going to pump out videos nonstop and I'll be driving a Rolls Royce next year. And that did not work. And I was making tons of content, engaging as much as I could in video, putting all of my time and effort into creating content, as opposed to being a realtor and talking to people. And I got no business pretty much my first year, actually pretty zero business my first year, just creating that content.
So interesting you bring this up. I mean, this is
Yeah,
a highly debated topic right here. So let's just spend some
yeah,
time on this. And the reason why I say that is um, when it comes to client acquisition and lead generation and things of that nature, there's these two, what I would say, competing worlds of inbound versus outbound.
hmm
And what works better and what you should and shouldn't do. And there's all these people that have all these opinions on both sides of the equation. You in the fitness industry were coming from a business where your success came pretty much through inbound, right? Through
hmm
content creation, et cetera.
hmm
Then you got into real estate and said, okay, well, it worked there. Let me just keep doing it here.
Right. Yeah.
What was it that didn't work when it came to content creation in real estate that was working in fitness?
I honestly think I know exactly what it was. Is I completely was unaware of the fact that I was creating content on all my social medias and everybody on my Facebook, my Instagram, everybody knew me. And
Mm,
so I had a sphere, you know, so they were, and that whole, now I was making content going on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for people who didn't even know me. And so
mm.
it just wasn't hitting the same audience as well, just because everyone on my social medias all knew me in fitness and they actually could hire me. And then something else that was huge that became obvious to me later is I trained quite a few influencers in LA. I mean, they're everywhere.
Sure.
People had millions of followers and they would post all the time. And so if I think about it that way, like those people were creating conversations for me naturally in fitness, but nobody was creating those conversations for me in real estate.
Great point. So really it has to do with the audience. And
Yeah.
you spent so much time, energy and effort building an audience in the fitness space
Yeah.
that and I say this all the time too, you know, when it comes to content creation, people don't really understand this unless you're really in it like you understand it, but it's all about the audience. And so like if you post a piece of content to the wrong audience, it might be a banger of a content piece in one audience, and then
hmm
it's an absolute dud if you have the wrong audience.
Yeah.
And I think you created an audience around
Yeah.
fitness that didn't translate into your real estate content. Would that be fair?
Completely correct. And to be transparent, I'm still creating content on a way less of a scale, and it is bringing in business now that I've been doing it 2 or 3 years, but way less business than my outbound prospecting. So
Yeah.
it's growing, and every year it's grown in terms of the amount of deals I've done through it. It's grown. I like to think of it the analogy. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that professor putting in like the balls into a jar, you know, and saying, you know what I'm talking about, where
Yep.
he's like, hey, and so I think where there's a glass jar, and he says he fills the whole thing with sand. There's no room for other bigger balls, but then if he puts the big balls in there, you can continue to fill with smaller and smaller things. If you know the analogy, probably makes sense. And social media, I see the outbound prospecting as those big balls going in there, and then supplementing it with the social media has been working way better for me.
100%. So much so that I posted something. Let me pull this up. I posted something that I think the audience will relate to so they can really get this point
Yeah.
just last week. And here's what I said. I said, I've tried everything in 20 years, and by far the best path to growing a real estate sales business is first outbound. And the reason for that is cash flow.
Yeah.
Then it's content creation. It's to build inbound. But that takes a long time. We're going to talk
Right.
about that. And so as you're generating cash flow through outbound methodologies, which we'll talk
Mhm.
about, you're
Yeah.
also building a long-term pipeline inbound business that takes a long time to monetize. And then
Mhm.
thirdly is paid traffic or paid media. And so I think what people really get wrong, Tori, is they'll see a real estate agent that's crushing it doing content creation and content marketing and inbound marketing strategies. And then what they don't realize is, to your point, that person has been doing it for 7 years.
Totally.
And then the person says, well, direct outbound, that's such an old school, like I hate that. Well, you don't have to love it. You just have to like the results it gets you. It's not like fitness, right? You are a
Yeah.
fitness instructor. You don't have to love the workouts that you're putting
Yeah.
me through, but
Right.
I just want to love the result. And so speak to the agent who says, that's looking for the path of least resistance, because that's what we're talking about here.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, I can just post on social media in the beginning and then bypass and never have to do step one, which is outbound. Obviously, you live through it. You probably say that is a myth, but I want to hear it in your words and how you would actually tell an agent who's trying to bypass the hard work of outbound and
Right.
go right to inbound.
So I would ask them how they plan on scaling that. Like, do you want the business to be in your control? Do you want to wake up and be able to control how much money you make, how much you scale, how many people you talk to? Because you don't have that control with a purely social media profile. And on top of that, I have a bit of a controversial opinion on this. I don't know if it's true, so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Is there
Sure.
so many people selling, so many real estate agents selling YouTube courses on how to, you'll never have to make a cold call again. And a lot of those people started create. I noticed it because I looked at all these courses and everything. They started YouTube in 2020, and I'm not taking away from their hard work. They worked super hard and they've earned it. But it was such a unique period in time during COVID where everybody was moving and YouTube wasn't huge in real estate quite yet. So all of a sudden, these people who were creating content on YouTube in that golden time during the pandemic when everyone was moving, their YouTube channels exploded. And I don't find it coincidental that now that people aren't moving as much across states, that they're now pivoting instead of banking on their YouTube and working with all those clients, they're now looking to create extra income through selling these courses. And I don't think that's a coincidence because I think their YouTube business has slowed down dramatically. I'm not taking away from their hard work, but I think they're ignoring the fact that, hey, it's not just YouTube that worked super well for them. It was that extremely unique time period, and they were the only ones in their market creating that content. So it's still worth creating content. It's working for me, but I definitely think it's a lot of people are saying like you can be closing hundreds of deals through YouTube right away like they did when they were the only ones doing it, if that makes sense.
You are 100% spot on. I mean, it is amazing, Tori, how much your finger is on the pulse of this thing. It's no surprise. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
in this business on the content side and you study it, that's exactly what happened. So
Yeah.
much so, I was actually just listening to a podcast on Think Media's YouTube
Hmm.
channel,
Yeah.
and Sean Cannell was talking about this exact same thing with
Yeah.
all these real estate channels that were popping off during the pandemic. To your exact
Totally.
point, I won't regurgitate what you just said, but you are exactly right. Their view counts exploded because of the time. It was like a gold rush. And
Dude.
they could
Yeah.
put in like a moving to Dallas video, 10 things you'd love about Dallas, and that
Yeah.
thing would get 100,000 views. And
Totally.
those videos, all of that stuff is dying quickly, really,
Mhm.
really quickly. And to your point, those people have now monetized the audience that they've built because it's the realtor that are hearing messages like that, and it's
Mhm.
exactly what they want to hear. Okay, so
Totally.
let's so
Oh my
so hear
God.
me out, right?
Yeah.
So you have a real estate agent who says, okay, I need to get clients. And I hear all these people talking about cold calling and outbound prospecting. And I tried it, and boy, oh boy, that's hard. So
Mhm.
then they see a message, never make a cold call again. And it's exactly
Yeah.
what they're hoping for. They say,
Yeah.
see, I knew it. I knew there was a better way. And so the marketer knows
Yeah.
this. The
Yeah.
marketer knows that they can take advantage of agents that don't know any better, that hear
Hmm.
marketing messages like cold calling is dead. And
Yep.
because they don't have the skill set to do it, it's messages like that that let them off the hook to say, yep, I knew there was a better way. And that's the
Yep.
beginning of shiny object syndrome. Listen, I am
100%.
not sitting here as an advocate that you have to love cold calling. What
Hmm.
I am an advocate for is that in 20 years of me trying everything under the moon, there's nothing that works as good. There's nothing that will get you cash flow as fast. There's
Hmm.
nothing, to your point, that puts you in control of your business like an outbound business. You don't have to love it. I don't love it. You don't have to even like it.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
get good at it, it allows you to have a consistent income
Yeah.
that content creation and marketing and advertising just doesn't bring.
No.
You agree with that?
100%. And on top of that, like this is something you've said before, but I learned it the hard way because I learned another hard lesson. Once I was like, okay, cool. Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. I believe in it for the long term, but I need business today. I don't want to do outbound prospecting. What can I do? Oh, I'm going to become an expert in Facebook and Instagram ads. And so
Yep.
every week I was cranking out ads and trying to learn funnels and doing all this stuff. But then guess what? Then I was paying all this money, all this time, all this energy, all this effort just to get leads that number one, half the time give you fake information. And then number two, it was still a cold call. They weren't sitting by their phone waiting to like, oh, I hope this Tory guy calls me. They were like, who are you? Why are you calling? Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not interested. I'm like, dude, you filled the form out. Like, and so it was just like
It's
I was just like, I'm cold calling anyway. And the amount of work I'm doing just to keep up with these ads, A/B test, all this stuff, keep up with the annoying algorithm, which is BS, just to do a cold call anyway. Oh my gosh, it was just I was once I got to that point, I was like, dude, I need to get back. I need to actually start doing some outbound prospecting, learn this, and I've been watching your videos all the way through, thinking, I'll admit it, that I could outsmart it. Uh,
absolutely.
I could not. I could not.
Listen, you are finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
The reason it's so interesting you say that, I thought I could outsmart it. Like truth be told,
Yeah.
years and years ago, I was like, dude, I know so much about marketing, blah, blah, blah. My ego got in the way. And I'm like, I started building seller landing pages and doing all
Yeah.
kinds of
Yeah.
marketing stuff. Dude,
Yeah.
14 years ago. And it's
Yep.
like, there is no path. There is no easy path. You cannot bypass like what's been tried and true.
Mhm.
And to your point, where I ended up it was what you just said.
Mhm.
Even if you are a great marketer, and most people aren't, but even if you are a great marketer,
Yeah.
where you're going to end up is with a list of opt-ins of people that you still have to cold call that don't want to hear
Yeah.
from you, and you're not
Totally.
going to get out of the thing that the marketer promised you. Cold calling is dead. Well, wait a minute. All they're going to do is fill your CRM up with mostly fake information, and
Mhm.
then the people that do put in the right contact information, you have to pick up the phone and call them. They aren't calling
Yeah.
you. So anyway, all that to say that you can bypass all of that in the beginning and go direct to consumer,
Mhm.
control the amount of activity you have that puts you in the driver's seat. And again, we'll move on to the next point, but it's not that inbound or content creation isn't important. We're doing it right now. It's
Right.
very important. How you do it and your expectation, I think, is the thing that matters the most. And for
Mhm.
most real estate agents who would say, I struggle with cash flow, I've said it 1,000 times.
Mhm.
Master outbound so you never have to worry about money.
Mhm.
Then you can have freedom to do other things. Yeah. All right.
100%.
So tell us about like you had some low points in like trying to figure this whole thing out, right? Tell us about that.
I had like I am not just saying it for the video, for our video here that I had the lowest points in my entire life from year one to December of last year. Just it broke my identity. Like that, I thought I was, at 20, and granted, I am fully aware that people were doing a million times better than I was, but I started in the fitness industry making low six figures when I was 21. And I thought I was awesome. I was like, dude, Tori is amazing. I am amazing. and real estate's going to be easy, and it to get out here and just be pouring 12 to 16 hour days and every single day. Like moving out here, I sold everything. I got like a 500 square foot apartment, and just to keep my expenses low, and so I could go all in on real estate. And I was going all in 12 to 16 hours a day and no business to show for it. My second year, I made $48,000 in my second year. And that is 12 to 16 hour days of trying to get better, trying new things, trying everything but outbound, trying and learning and paying for courses. And just I was doing it's not like I was sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. I essentially was, but I was trying everything under the sun, and it just broke me. Like I just hit so many points where I just was saying to myself, like, what's wrong with me? Like, is there something I don't know about myself? I just it just I hit the lowest point in my life in December of last year. Just being here for like 2.5, almost 3 years, and having $48,000 to show for and all this effort. I was just like, I am not who I thought I was, and
Mm.
I needed to make a serious change. What I was doing wasn't working, and
Mm.
that's when I invested in your program at that point. But man, like I've heard you put questions up before and polls on your social media of like, hey, did you have the right expectations getting into real
Mm.
estate? Did you know you were getting into sales when you got into real estate? And I'm almost mad because I didn't. I'm like, it's shown to be glitzy and glamorous and like easy, or maybe not. I didn't get into it because it was easy, but easier than it is a better way to put it. And yeah, it just shook me to my absolute core to burn my whole world down. A business I was very proud of. I thought I was so good at this stuff, to purposefully drop that because I saw an opportunity in real estate. I was like, hey, I don't think I can take this fitness thing as far as I want, as my aspirations want to take me, but I believe real estate can. So I'm going to burn this. I shut down my online business. I shut down everything. I didn't come here with any online clients. I had no income day one of being here. And then to do that, and then for 2 years to have nothing to show for it, oh my gosh, that's gonna shake any man or woman to their core.
Yeah, and thank you for being vulnerable and being honest and
Yeah.
telling the truth, because there's an upside to this story, which we're going to talk about in a
Yes,
second.
yes,
We're going
yes.
to get to that in just a second. But for the audience, most people are living that nightmare right now. To your point, it frustrates me too that the industry sets a false narrative of what the
Hmm.
business is and what the business is not. And what really, really, really pisses me off is these marketers make it worse.
Oh yeah.
That
Totally.
that 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 is, but I get so much pushback because these real estate agents buy into this facade that they could just it's a disgusting world, but like portray a false narrative or a false identity on social media, and
Yeah.
all and then magically they're going to reach some type of success through that, and the
Hmm.
marketer be willing to take their money knowing they're
Yeah.
selling them absolute snake oil. It's
Yeah.
insane what's
Yeah.
happening out there. But agents buy it every day because they are unwilling to accept the truth. And the
Mm.
truth is, and this is where I get a lot of pushback too. The truth is, real estate is a direct sales business, meaning we go direct to the consumer. They aren't
Hmm.
people walking in like a bank. You have to
Yeah.
go out there and generate conversations. And that's what people have no idea what they're getting themselves into and how freaking hard that is.
Yeah.
Uh, it's very, very difficult to go out there and generate opportunities. Listen, you can be in sales in an inbound business like mortgage or title or things where, or like the car business or any business where the company
Hmm.
is driving all of your lead generation and you sit there and handle inbound inquiries. I mean,
Yeah.
that's nowhere close to what we have to do as real estate agents. Okay,
No.
right? So let's talk about the shift. So you go through
Yeah.
this 2 year period of time, you go through I can't even imagine how much pain, because to your point, you were succeeding at a high level. You burned the boats, so to speak, to get into this business, and you're like, dude, 2 years of everything I know, and I have like nothing to show for it. I was
Yeah.
just saying, I don't know if you were on the coaching call yesterday. I was just saying, real estate is too hard to make an average income. There are too many other
Uh,
things that you could be doing that are way easier to make 40 or 50 grand a year.
yeah.
And that's why it's like, unless you're making a lot of money, this business oftentimes isn't worth it. So, what was the shift you made 2 years into the game that kind of turned things around for you?
Well, so what was the shift that I made 2 years? Well, first, sure. So I had watched because I had watched your videos because I was trying to learn about real estate before I got into it. I'd come across your videos, and I was like, well, I can once again, I can outsmart this. I don't need to do this. I can create content or something like that. And every single low pointer when I was just had nothing in my day to do aside from create content, I always thought back to those videos of like I could call people. And I was like, no, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But it was just a total submission to this isn't working. This is not working. Like if you were right, where are the results? You have 2 years of hard work. And if you were doing the right thing, it would be showing. And so I was like, I've got to do something different. And so I started watching videos again about outbound prospecting. And I was like, this makes sense. And then I'm a big believer in paying for knowledge. I think you're going to pay either way. I know I've seen your interviews with Alex Hermosi, and he's big on the ignorance tax, paying that down. And I was like, I'm just going to invest, go all in on this. I've gone all in on my versions of what I think this should work.
Yeah.
Did not work. So don't let me try this. Let me go all in on this. And then I'll determine after a year or two if I go all in on this, is this the right path or not?
Yeah.
And so that's when I bought into purchased your program, which we'll dive into, I'm sure, but I'll just give the spoiler alert that immediately it just was like this was the best investment I've ever made in my life.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get into, you had the hard part, right? I've tested so many things, and I just know what works and what doesn't work. And so you had to do what it was I was asking you to do. You
Yeah.
did it, but you got the result, right? And
Yeah.
so, because what I ask people to do certainly isn't easy,
Hmm.
but it works. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the difference between people buying into this, again, this narrative of easy. You tried that for 2 years. You wasted a lot of time, energy, money, effort, et cetera, et cetera. And then you said, okay, I gotta stop. I gotta stop looking for the path of least resistance, and I have to do what works. And
Yeah.
so when you and I first started working together, and you started to get on the phone from a content creation guy, now going direct outbound, that wasn't easy in the early days, was it?
No, no, no. Long story short, it was I felt sick to my stomach going into it. And I was just like, I remember my very first day of outbound prospecting. I was just like, I'm gonna do because you had mentioned 30 contacts, which seen on your YouTube, and I thought that meant like 30 calls. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking 30 people. I'm just literally because sometimes one person will have like six numbers. And so I remember I got to the 30 calls within like 5 minutes and I clicked hang up. I was like, I did it. I'm done. I'm done. Like, but
Yeah.
that's how I had to ease into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt sick to my stomach going into it the first day.
Yeah. So how did you, we're going to get into the tactical piece of the whole thing. I
Yeah.
relate a lot to outbound prospecting to like people's weight loss journeys, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that correlate. So like, first off, how did you come up with the mindset or the confidence to say, I have to do this? Because it's one thing to learn, and what you were talking about, what I wrote down on my notes, which I didn't say before, which is a perfect example of what we call the disease of knowledge, which is like capturing all this information on the internet, but not
Mhm.
applying it. So
Yeah.
now here we are yet again. You invested more money into doing something with me. How did you say, all right, I need to actually do it though? Like it's one thing to learn it, it's one thing to know it. How did you say, all right, I'm going to actually have to do this now?
If you want the very transparent answer, and it brings me no pride to say it, have getting down to like $8,000 on a bank account and having
That'll
two
do it.
That'll do it, and having like 2 years of history behind you doing it your way. And
Mm.
I was just like, this isn't working. Like this, I got to do something different. I need a direction. And this guy had Brandon had a direction. So I just that that did all the heavy lifting for me to begin with. Of like, I have no other option anymore. I've tried everything else. I'm running out of money. I moved out here with savings, depleted all of it, trying it my way. And so getting down to that rock bottom moment, both emotionally and financially, I had no choice. And now I still see it as no choice, but for very different reasons.
Absolutely.
That's how it got into it.
Yeah, fair enough, and totally makes sense, right? I mean, it's like Viktor Frankl says, if a man's why is strong enough, he can bear any how. And so
Yep.
you had a very deep why, and so
Mhm.
so let's look at what the business looks like today. If you don't mind sharing like
Sure.
some of the results and what income looks like today. People heard your the backstory of all the pain you kind of went through. This is kind of like your hero's journey, if you will, right? You're familiar with that?
Sure. Yeah, oh, yes,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much so.
Yeah. And so, what does it look like today? And then let's unpack the business so the audience can say, okay, wow, I can see myself doing kind of what Tori's doing. But what does the business look like nowadays?
Yeah, so now just to give some high level stuff. It's nowhere near where I want it to be or where I
Sure.
believe I can take it using your methods. But this year, uh, and next week, I'm looking at my whiteboard. I'll be at 17 closings in August. It's no September of this year. And I should, with everything I've got going on, I should hit somewhere between 22 to 25 closings by the end of the year, which will land me somewhere between 225 to 275,000 in GCI, probably around the probably to the 250, probably is what it'll land.
Yeah. So again, to your point, I know you have aspirations of taking this much larger, but perspective, like coming out of your old business where you're making about 100, right, 150, then
Mhm.
going back down to 50, now to 250. Now
Yeah.
you can start to really, really see the future.
Yeah.
What type of confidence or what is your emotional state like today?
That's a valid question. I feel like you're checking in on me. Like, you okay? Dude, I feel fantastic. I love it. It's the amount of confidence I have. The confidence runs so deep on so many levels because number one, like, yeah, your program works in the terms of the results that can get you today, tomorrow, all of that. But looking deeper, you're not just you're buying into your program is buying into 20 years of experience. So I can say with ridiculous amount of confidence that I can communicate to clients, present to clients, and represent them with 20 years of experience through using your dialogue, your words, your coaching like that. So I have tons of confidence in the results I'm getting today with the earnings I'm going to be getting. But then the confidence I'm able to communicate with with my actual clients, the confidence I have in myself. It's immeasurable the difference I have from last year at this time to today.
Yeah. And I would say the unspoken reality around our emotional like well-being when it comes
Mhm.
to outbound versus inbound, that's
Oh
like
yeah.
something no one talks about, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I remember trying to figure out the inbound thing in the real estate sales world and
Mhm.
always living in doubt, always living in worry, always
Mhm.
living in anxiety because you just don't have any control. You don't
Yeah.
know when you're going to get a lead. You don't know when you're going to get an opportunity. With outbound, and I think this is what you're saying, and I know exactly the feeling is everybody has the same feeling. Once you crack the code on outbound, it's
Mhm.
like all your doubt goes away, all your worry goes
Oh
away because
yeah.
you can go to any market in the country, it doesn't matter, and you could
Mhm.
start making money like now through the
Yeah.
skills that you'll
Yeah.
have for the rest of your life. Speak to that that ability to now like have peace in your mindset, knowing it doesn't matter. I know that I can go generate conversations through this or through any
Yeah.
methodology, and I know how to have a conversation such that I can acquire clients when I feel like it.
Oh man, it's unbelievable because it's just learning how to do outbound prospecting, especially the way that you coach it. The confidence it gives you is not only within this work, but you can take that same experience and yeah, sell anything, anywhere. But then on top of that, where was I going to go with that? It was Oh yeah, it's just one of the things that I love most about the prospecting is that you're building one of the most fundamental tools you will use the rest of your life, which is communication.
Right.
You cannot become a good outbound prospector without becoming a phenomenal communicator. And I would bet there's probably nobody out there who could name one part of your life, work or personal, that would not benefit from you becoming an exceptional communicator. So I honestly love prospecting. Now, that doesn't mean every day I want to do it. Most days I'm neutral about it, but what I always never lose sight of is how much I love the fact that this is not only getting me business today, tomorrow, the future, but I am building the most fundamental skill, the most one of the most profitable skills in the world. And if I can then take this, and if I want to go into, say, management, which I don't want to do, based on other videos I've heard you say, talk about, but I just love that I'm building the skill of communication while I'm building income today. Like I love that those two just go together, and it's just one of my favorite things about prospecting through your methodology.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's break down what the business looks like today. So
Yeah.
when it comes to let's start at the top. So let's talk about, okay, what lead sources or lead pillars are you finding the most success with?
So expireds, I would love to say, I should probably talk to you about this more in the coaching group. I would love to say I kill it with expireds in the sense that I get meetings with them same day or like that week. But man, do I close most of my expireds like 3 to 6 months to a year later is when I'm listing their properties, and then through lots of follow-up. Because I know some people just crush it with getting those same day appointments, and I'm like,
Yeah.
man, what's wrong with me? But then I look at my closings like, these are all expired. Like,
Yeah.
okay. So that's where most of it comes from is expireds and old expireds.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Okay. And so when we are talking about prospecting, can you give the audience an idea of how much of it you're doing? How many hours do you spend doing it per day, per week? And then how many people are you actually talking to on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I prospect from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then so 4 hours minimum weekdays. If I can, I try to get an extra hour or two in the afternoon. So I aim for 5 to 6, but I have a minimum requirement of 4 hours Monday through Friday. And then if I can get in the over the weekend as well, I add that in as well. And
I
then
love it.
I talk to, it fluctuates anywhere from like 24 to 35 people a day, depending on the day.
It's amazing. I mean, right there is the reason why you're winning. And that's what I
Right.
keep trying to tell agents. I'm trying to scream it from the mountaintops that the number of people
Yeah.
you talk to daily will
Hmm.
result in the amount of income you earn annually. And so when
Absolutely.
you look at a prospector versus a marketer, it's like,
Hmm.
like you are having 25 to 35 voice to voice conversations
Yeah.
with people who own homes about listing and selling their home daily. He didn't
It's
say weekly. You didn't say yearly. I mean,
yeah.
most agents aren't having 35 conversations a year
Hmm.
with people that want to sell their house. You're doing this on a daily basis. So, one of the questions that often comes up is like, okay, how are you, or is there any best practices you can share around increasing contact rate? A lot of people are dealing with spam issues in their numbers and which systems, and I'm using this system to get data, I'm using this system to get data. Is there any one or two tips that you found that helps you get people on the phone?
So what works best for me is using Mojo cells, their dialer, and that they have a whitelisting system. I was doing, I was using Vulcan 7 originally, and then manually whitelisting the numbers. If you just Google like how to whitelist or how to prevent spam, there's a few different places you can register your number, and I was doing that. That it's pretty time consuming, and then you still have to rotate the numbers out every once in a while because it will get flagged as spam most likely eventually. The going
Sure.
over to Mojo, they have it where you can just whitelist it within their system, and they do all that work for you. And that's what I do to make sure my number doesn't show up as spam. And then I just keep track of I just pay attention when I'm using a certain number. Um, as far as how to get phone numbers, there's an app called Burner that I use. It's like 25 bucks a month. It gives me 10 phone numbers. And then
Hmm.
you can cycle through those numbers as well. So I just upload those to Mojo. I use their system to whitelist it. And I just pay attention to if there's any certain number that I just call a list like no one picked up. I'll write that number down and I'll call it again. I'll use it again the next day. And if I have a really low pickup rate again on that number, then I'll swap it out with something else. So I do pay attention, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I love it. And that's how you're able to get to the average, which we see over all the
Yeah.
agents that I coach, 7 contacts per hour. That's where we
Yeah.
come up with that number, and you're right there on the spot. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's break down the conversation. I think this is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, anybody can pick up the phone and call an expired, but what
Yeah.
you say and how you say it will determine whether you get a result or not. So it's like we always look at actions and skills. It's not
Mhm.
enough just to do the action, even though that's the hardest part, but
Yeah.
then it matters. Your skill matters too. So I know early on, these calls were hard for you. You didn't have the skill set, the mind, like it was just tough.
Yeah.
Now, walk us through what are some of the sales techniques that you have learned through the work that you and I have done together that helps you to have these conversations with expireds where you know there's a lot of other agents calling these people, yet you're
Yeah.
able to penetrate and get through set appointments.
Yeah, by far, the like so actual script parts or just like overall
Yeah,
framework.
techniques or scripts, whatever
Yeah.
tactic strategy you want to share about the call itself.
Yeah, so I think starting off the pattern interrupt is really good, but then quantifying like, okay, pattern interrupt is easy to say. What does it actually mean? And this is, I would love to say I came up with this, but it came from one of your videos I just watched like this week in the coaching group. You want to use a pattern interrupt specifically to elicit empathy from the person. So
That's right.
it's one thing to say like, hey Brandon, I know I'm calling you out of the blue. Another one being, hey Brandon, look, I know I'm calling you out of the blue. One just the tone difference, you're eliciting some empathy there. So you whatever it could be a million different things, but using your tone and the words to specifically elicit empathy gets you into a really good conversation. And I'm honestly shocked when people say like, oh, I can't even get a word in with these people. I'm like, well, I've got other struggles in my prospecting, but how do you not get at least talk conversation with them? Because pretty much if you elicit empathy right away and ask them if you can ask a question, man, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes.
That's right. So you're using a permission-based opener. And to
Yes.
your point, we see an 85 to 90% success rate with that when
Yeah.
delivered correctly
Right.
by eliciting empathy from the prospect using self-deprecating language,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is the whole key because most people that do any type of outbound prospecting or calling can't get past the first 10 seconds, let alone anything
Yeah.
else. And so now you're able to get through 90% of the time, you're able to actually have a good conversation. Now, that was great. Thank you for that. If we look
Mhm.
deeper into the call and we talk about, okay, setting appointments with these people and getting
Mhm.
strangers who you don't know and they don't know you, how are you getting these strangers to invite you to come to their house and then ultimately set up time to interview to list and sell their home?
Yeah. So to get into the conversation of an appointment, it definitely is about motivation, figuring out what that motivation is, and then that motivation being the bridge to the appointment. And if you can use that motivation in your language to set the appointment even better. I actually have this right next on my computer. I know you can't read it, but what it says is step one. This is appointment setting language. Is it okay if I share this?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay. So this is like now I got motivation. We want to be closer to Florida. Cool. So step one is remove reactants. Step two, my verbiage, if you'd like to invite me over. I love the word invite. It's not consultation. It's not appointment. It's not those salesy words. People invite and friends over. They invite people they like over. So I love that word. So one, remove reactants. Two, if you'd like to invite me over. Three, deliver the value statement. That's where you'd want to insert the motivation. Four, give them back control. And then five is the because heuristic. That sounds super wordy. Like, what does that actually mean to anybody watching this? But what that could sound like is like, Brandon, I don't know if this makes any sense for us to do, but if you'd like to invite me over, I could share with you some of the completely new strategies I am using to help my other clients move out of state, even in our slower market. And then at the end of the day, you can decide if it makes sense to sell the property or not, because at the end of the day, you're not going to do anything unless it makes sense for you to do it. Am I right? And that
Beautiful.
overall is getting into appointments.
I mean, that was a masterclass right there in and of itself. So the audience, you guys are lucky. You're lucky that, to be on this episode because Tori is giving you guys some really good meat and potatoes. Okay, that was amazing. Thank you for that. I am curious based on what you said before because I know how it worked for my business, but it sounds like
Yeah.
the vast majority of your appointments is coming out of lead follow-up, not
Oh
the
yeah.
initial call. Would that be safe?
Yeah. Oh, I love lead follow-up. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's like,
Talk to us about that, because a lot of
yeah,
agents are making that mistake of like they're living in this all or nothing
yeah,
mindset where it's like they make one call to the expired, and if they don't get the appointment on that call, they get nothing ever. Talk to
yeah.
us how important lead follow-up is.
It's crucial. Like once again, number one, pretty much all of my closings, pretty much all of the closings are through lead follow-up. And number two, those consultations go way better because they've gotten to know you through lead follow-up. They already like you.
Yeah,
As opposed to if I call an expired and I get an appointment from the first call, I'm like, dang it. Like I'm
it's gonna
still
be tough.
excited to go, but it's just like I know they're probably interviewing tons of people. They're gonna try to crush on either they're not actually motivated. They're gonna want the lower commission. I love the lead follow-up. What that actually looks like, high level. Number one, immediately once I get a lead, I send them a video text that I've have it pre-recorded, and then I on my iPhone I have a text replacement, so I just type in VT and it types out, it automatically inserts like the text I put there saying, "Hey, it's Tori. We just got off the call talking about XYZ." So that makes it nice and easy. So I send that
Yeah,
right after we hang up. Then I add them on as my friend on Facebook. I put them on my weekly email. And then the next day, I have my CRM, which is Follow Up Boss. Anyone I inputted in on one day, the next day, I have it in my to-do list to send them a follow-up email just saying, hey, just making sure you got my resume okay. And then I also call them as well and say, hey, it's Tori. We spoke yesterday. Just making sure you got the resume sent okay. Sent over okay. You did. Cool. I have it in my notes to touch base with you in March about getting closer to Florida. Anything I can do for you until then? No. Cool. Leave it at that. I also put them up on a neighborhood on the MLS. I set them up on a search. So I don't set them up. I set myself up on a search
sure.
for any properties that that hit the market or sell or go pending in their neighborhood. And in the email signature, what I do to help me out, and I've noticed this help a lot, is I in the email I get, I put their name like Stacy Robbins, and then in parentheses, I'll put their bed, bath, and square footage. So that way it can speak to if there's a home that's comparable or not. Because I would send properties to people like, hey, this just hit the market, it's really nice. And they'd be like, oh, it's way bigger, it's way smaller. And then it just makes me look not as intelligent. I don't know their property. So I put the bed, bath, and square footage of their property in the email signature. So that way I can say, hey, I know this property is bigger, or I know this property is smaller, or this is a great comp, even though it has one less bed, one more bed. And that's created some amazing conversations over email. It's crazy. And then if it's on their street, like the property is on their street, I text it to them as well, just to get that via text. And that's been great for follow up. And then something else that I do. I won't go into the details of how to do this. I guess just figure it out is I use Cloud CMA. They have a great online presentation. And 1 week after I enter them in my CRM as a lead, I send them all the comps in their neighborhood for the past 6 months. And I say, hey, I know you're not looking to do anything right now. Since you're considering a sale in the future, thought you might like to see some of their recent activity in the neighborhood. And I just fire that off to them as well. And
It's amazing.
that's been a great conversation generator too.
Yeah, and I love what you said about like how you're executing on the weekly email. It's
Mhm.
so smart what you're doing. You're not sending them the search. You're setting yourself up for the search and
Yeah.
using the content updates from the MLS as
Yeah.
the reason for the weekly email. It's so smart.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to tell agents like that's the easiest way to execute and deliver actual tangible value through
Right.
weekly email.
Yeah.
So smart, so smart. Okay, let's now shift to the appointment itself.
Okay.
This is where the agent either wins or loses the opportunity, right? And so, what are some of the things that maybe you were struggling with in the beginning when you first started this business when it comes to listing presentation that you've learned now that really help you to stand out from other agents that you might be competing with that allows you to win the listing and get clients to say, yeah, Tori, you're the obvious choice.
Yeah, so I'll definitely, if it's okay, I'll start high level, then get super tactical. So number
Sure.
one, that was like the main thing I wanted actually when I was getting outside of prospecting, purchasing a program. I was just like, what do I say when I go in these appointments? Like, what do I take pictures and talk about the market or whatever.
So true, I know.
Yeah, I had no idea how to do that. And so that was, and then your listing presentation, oh my gosh, it's that if that was the only thing I got was a listing presentation, I would have paid 10 times the purchase price of your program. That listing presentation is amazing. But getting into it, the actual when I'm actually there in the actual consultation, what I have learned has been the consistently most impactful is go as you've worded it, going for the close in the opening.
That's right.
You open it by setting the agenda, and that you can feel the client relax. You can feel them open up to you, and you both gain agreement that pretty much we're gonna make a decision at the end of this.
Yeah.
And setting up that expectation, and more so getting their permission to do that is phenomenal.
That's so good. It's so good. And yeah, we don't have time to get into all the tactical things, but yeah, if
Yeah.
the takeaway from what you're saying for the audience sake is if you are finding yourself getting to the end of your conversation with a potential seller and you're not winning the business, most agents think that it's what they're doing wrong at the end, and it's not. It's what they're not doing at the beginning that causes them to lose the opportunity at the end, and that's exactly what you've learned as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once I started implementing that into the beginning, that pretty much got rid of the whole, oh, we need to think about it or anything like that. Like where we make a decision at the end of that consultation, no problem. And they don't mind because we agreed to make a decision in the very beginning. So it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And here's the thing too. It's like I think so many agents get so caught up in like getting to yes that they
Mhm.
actually that's the reason why they repel clients. Is they're
Yeah.
so needy to get a yes that oftentimes they get a no. So in the opener, we really focus on yes or no without a bias towards either one. Like
Yeah.
we are so detached from the outcome, to your point, which makes the person feel at ease. Because when they interview other agents, they come across so salesy, we call it commission breath, as you know,
Oh yeah.
that
Oh
the
yeah.
clients can feel how much this person's attached to them getting to the yes, that they
Mhm.
put the prospect in a situation to lie the whole time, to
Oh
mislead them,
yeah.
to misguide them, to lie to them, to not be honest with things. And it's the salesperson's fault. Would you agree with that?
100%. We have to take responsibility that we're creating these objections, that we're creating the I need to think about it. Whatever negative reaction they have, that's our fault.
That's right.
So we need to figure out how to set these meetings, conversations up in a way to make the prospect feel a way where they don't need to give that objection in the first place. And that's a lot of hard work to figure that out, but that's the work of what we do.
That's right. So if you could rewind and go get licensed all over again, make the move out of fitness, right? And go to Denver all over again.
Hmm.
Like, what would you have done differently so you didn't have to go through that 2 years of like crawling through the shit, if you will? Like,
Oh yeah.
what would you have done so you didn't have to go through all that pain?
I would have begun doing outbound prospecting before I even got to Denver, before I got here.
Mm,
I would have been setting up nurtures or long-term doing Zooms
yes.
or Zoom. I would have started before the before I even got here, trying to get listings and closings and everything.
Yeah. And if an agent, and it makes total sense, right? You would have started building a pipeline. And so for the agent that's
Yeah.
like, if you go back to where you were, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, and the agent's like, maybe there's an agent listening or watching this, Tori, who has tried some things and not had great results, and they know about outbound prospecting. They know they probably should. They probably feel guilty for not doing it, and they just haven't really like gone all in. Like, how would you coach them, or what advice would you tell them to get started that would help them to just take the first step to get started in this path?
Um, I would probably just ask them in a genuinely caring way, like, how is doing it your way working? Like, is it working? And if they say no, which they're gonna say no, I'd say like, well, do you think it's time to try something new? Or if I wanted to use some more powerful language, I would say, well, look, you can keep doing exactly what it is that you're doing. Probably going to keep getting the same results. But if you were going to try something new, like outbound prospecting, what benefits do you think there would be? And
Beautiful.
then
There
go
we
from
go.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for where you're going to take this thing. And there's a lot of people that watch these interviews, that maybe are going through some of the struggles that you are, Any last pieces of like wisdom that you want to share with the audience that might help them like push forward whatever they're going through from a pain perspective?
Man, I think it's just nice to have things be simple, and like the more people you talk to, the more you're gonna sell real estate. Simple as that. Like just talk to more people. Like if you want more, talk to more people.